What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for today's video where we're going to talk about franchise tag and the players, everything like that, all the different players that could be franchise tag. We've talked about some of these players before, but with today being the first official day where teams are going to be able to franchise tag players and transition tag players, then I figured it's a good time to go ahead, talk about it, see what we're looking at, see what we think the Colts should do. What are the projected franchise tag numbers for the different positions and things like that. And where I want to start at is with the Carolina Panthers and Brian Burns. And when you're looking at defensive ends, the projected franchise tag number for them this season is going to be $20.247 million. And the question is he worth that value, right? Do we think that the Panthers are going to be willing to give him that? Right now, the Panthers have $28.6 million in cap space going into this offseason. And when you look at Brian Burns last season, we've already talked about, but he had 8 sacks. He had 40 pressures, 18 quarterback hits, and his pressure rate was 11.1. And that's what we've talked about so much is the Colts need somebody who can get consistent edge pressure, and 11.1% pressure rate is really good. Having somebody that can come in and give that for the defense is going to be vitally important. So hopefully he doesn't end up getting tagged. With the Panthers having so little in cap space, it'll be interesting to see if they're willing to allocate more than $20 million to a defensive end, especially considering the fact that they're trying to build around a quarterback who they just drafted last season, #1 overall. So it'll be interesting to see what the Panthers do. This could have a massive impact on what the Colts do, right? Brian Burns, again, somebody we've mentioned coming to the Colts. So if he doesn't end up getting franchise tagged, then as free agency begins, that would be somebody that I expect the Colts to try to target and to try to go after with so much cap space this offseason. Okay, and somebody else that the Colts could end up targeting through this offseason if he's not tagged is Jalen Johnson. And right now, it seems like there's more than enough reason for Jalen Johnson to end up back with the Bears. He came out and said he wanted to be back with the Bears. The Bears have more than $67 million in cap space. When you look at him, like the package just from 2023, he's only 24 years old. And in 2023, he had a career high with 4 interceptions. He was a second team All Pro and a Pro Bowler. And then when he was being thrown at, opposing quarterbacks that targeted Johnson only completed 46.3% of their passes and had just 1 touchdown with him as a primary defender. He also had a 28.5 passer rating in coverage. So all in all, Jalen Johnson, a year where he had to be the best he's ever been so that he could get paid, he was the best he's ever been. So this is going to be the question for the Colts, right? Needing to pay Michael Pittman Jr., needing to pay Kenny Moore. Do they go out and pay a guy like Jalen Johnson if he ends up available? But it looks like, again, there's a good chance he either gets signed or gets franchise tagged by the Bears. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll definitely keep an eye on that name. T. Higgins is a guy that when you look at the receiver market, he's going to want a bigger contract, but he's also coming off the worst season of his career. And some of that's due to the fact that he only played 12 games. Some of that's due to the fact that Joe Burrow was in and out of the lineup through this season. So with the projected franchise tag number being at $20.714 million, you would have to assume like he would probably be okay with getting the franchise tag for a year, and the Bengals would definitely be okay franchise tagging him for a year. And then it would be a, let me bet on myself situation, which, making almost $21 million in a bet on yourself situation is really good, which is why, I feel as much as I'd like to say T. Higgins probably has a good chance of ending up being available, I just don't know how likely that really is. So unfortunately, it looks like T. Higgins probably not going to be available. Then as we continue to go through these teams and guys that could be franchise tagged, the next one to talk about is going to be the Colts. And, of course, Michael Pittman Jr. and everything that he means to us. We talked plenty about this. Again, the wide receiver numbers, $20.714 million, which compared to what receivers are making and what a #1 receiver is going to warrant, right? Michael Pittman Jr. probably going to want closer to $25 million. So with getting him for $20.7 million is going to be a good deal. So even though Chris Ballard has never used the franchise tag, he's always mentioned like it's there and it's a tool. And if he needs to use it, he will. We'll see if he finally uses it or if they're able to get a long-term contract done with Michael Pittman Jr. But one way or another, feels like Michael Pittman Jr. should be staying in-house, even though what I didn't realize before I was doing research for this is that he has a career yards per catch of only 10.9, which isn't a whole lot, right? For an offense in this day and in the NFL, you want to have an explosive offense. 10.9 isn't very explosive. Now that is a first down, right? Every catch being a first down. He's a good possession receiver. So what's that worth in the free agent market? We'll see. But $20.714 million is presumably what we could see Michael Pittman making throughout this year. Okay, and the next up is Josh Allen, defensive end from the Jaguars. And again, that defensive end number is $20.247 million. And when you look at the numbers from Josh Allen, it really makes what Brian Burns did look like not a lot, right? Brian Burns' numbers compared to Josh Allen's numbers, like Josh Allen finished with a franchise record for the Jaguars, 17 and a half sacks last year. He also had 66 tackles with 33 quarterback hits. Okay, he had 90 pressures compared to 40 from Brian Burns and a pressure rate of 18.3 compared to 11.1 for Brian Burns. So Josh Allen, all in all, he's one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. If he's able to get out of Jacksonville, that'd be great. If we go after him, give him big money, I'd rather sign a veteran defensive end and then draft a corner if that's the way we're going to go. We want to get somebody in the secondary, draft them. I think going after one of the veteran defensive ends that are really good is paramount. Josh Allen would be ideal. The Jaguars have $11.3 million in available cap space. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves do they make. They have other guys that they have to think about signing. With Trevor Lawrence there, do they try to build around the offense and then they'll draft for defense? We'll see what they decide to do. Sounds like he's probably going to be franchise tag. But again, another one that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on. And a name that I haven't really talked about with us, there hasn't really been a whole lot of talk about him, is L'Jarius Sneed and the fact that he could be franchise tagged. But by all indications, it feels like there's a chance that Sneed could end up being a guy that they franchise tag. Now, the Chiefs also have to try to re-sign Chris Jones, but it's going to be much cheaper to go ahead and tag Sneed and then try to sign Chris Jones to a new deal. So it'll be interesting to see what the Chiefs do. If L'Jarius Sneed is available, then there are going to be a lot of teams throwing a lot of money at L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed didn't allow a single passing touchdown. He had 2 interceptions. He only allowed a 45.2 passer rating when targeted, and he doesn't get targeted much because he's one of the best corners in the league. You just don't throw at L'Jarius Sneed like that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Name that, now that I've seen it, I'll definitely pay attention to, because with the Chiefs, the name all along has been Chris Jones. I never heard that L'Jarius Sneed was going to be a contender to be franchise tagged. So we'll definitely be paying attention to that. If he's available, then he would be somebody. Maybe Chris Ballard wouldn't go that crazy in free agency to go after a guy like L'Jarius Sneed, but it's definitely a possibility with as good as he is and with the upgrades that the Colts need at that position. Okay, so as we move on here, the next one up is Christian Wilkins, who by all accounts sounds like he's going to end up getting franchise tagged. But if we don't pay Grover Stewart, and with DeForest Buckner getting older, going over that 30 mark, maybe it's time to bring in a guy like Christian Wilkins. You pay him, you let Buckner's contract run out, and then Buckner can figure it out from there after the season, whether he comes back to the Colts or he ends up going to a place like Buffalo and trying to win a championship, right? Or, I could see Grove wanting to finish out his time with the Colts and then go to a team like the Ravens. It just feels like he'd be a good fit for that Ravens team. So we'll see what happens with Buck going forward. That's obviously a much in the future conversation, next offseason kind of conversation. But Christian Wilkins, if he doesn't get tagged, which I believe he will, maybe that's a guy that the Colts end up wanting to target in free agency. Okay, and a guy that the Colts probably aren't going to target at all because they don't need to pay this guy. They already paid a running back. But Saquon Barkley, just an interesting note. Mike Tannenbaum, who, used to work in NFL front offices, and there's a reason he doesn't anymore. If you listen to what he says on ESPN, there's a good reason Mike Tannenbaum is not in a front office in the NFL anymore. But he was talking about how Saquon Barkley would be a perfect fit with the Cowboys, and I think that's interesting. Just something to bring up, a little topic of note right there, something that a little side conversation we could have. Because Saquon Barkley on that team instead of Tony Pollard, I think that'd be kind of a match made in heaven right there, to be completely honest. Okay, but then the last player to talk about here is Mike Evans, who, again, sounds like he's going to end up getting the franchise tag. Mike Evans has always been a Buccaneer. He's talked about wanting to stay in Tampa Bay and wanting to play there. Baker Mayfield seems like he's going to be staying in Tampa Bay. So he knows who his quarterback's going to be. Mike Evans coming off another really good season where he had 79 catches, 1,255 yards, and 13 touchdowns at age 30. Right, and his cap number last year was 23.7. With the franchise tag, it would be 20.714, like we already talked about. So there's no telling what kind of deal Mike Evans wants at his age. Realistically, like, he probably isn't going to get 25 million like he probably deserves, honestly. But putting a franchise tag on Mike Evans just for a season and giving time to work out a deal, as the Bucs continue to go forward and as they continue to try to fix their cap situation from when they sold out to win a championship. So going into this offseason, they have $36.9 million in available cap space. They have to pay Baker, and it sounds like he's going to get a pretty big number. And then going forward is where they're going to want to work out the extension. So Mike Evans very easily could end up on the franchise tag this year. Of course, he doesn't have to sign that, but it does seem like that's the route that's going to end up being taken. So, I'd like to know what your guys' opinion is on all this, all the different guys that we talked about. Who do you hope ends up in free agency? Who do you hope we can sign out of these players? Of course, what do you think about Pitt? Should we put the franchise tag on him at just over $20 million? Or should we just give him a new deal for whatever he wants? What do you think we should do? You let me know down in the comment section. And of course, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you can get any updates that happen with any of this information. We're also going to continue free agency and draft talk, so make sure you get notified for that. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. As always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.